everyone. Thank you for being here. Calling the Public Works Committee meeting Tuesday, June 20th, 23 to order. Do I have approval of the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion? Thank you. The record has been moved. Public comment. Anybody? No? I do have a public comment. Well, I'm not really part of the public, but I just want to remind ourselves, every now and then we need to remember as a committee that what our purview is, and that it is to make, I just lost my thought here. So the purview is we're not making decisions for the council, we're supposed to be just recommending. So I just want to make sure that we all remember that part.
Very good.
Sometimes I forget and I feel like I'm making decisions, and I am not making decisions, I'm just recommending. So just keep that on the back of our heads. Thank you. Okay, action items, utility release. Plenty of those today. The first one is the local scoop. Grill and food. Any discussion? Any motion?
Well, when I read it, it was basically denied on the little check mark. It said not reported within 60 days. But it did say that the plumber said that the drain was into some wastewater treatment, it leaked. So that would, deny it at that point, but the bill was quite high, $1,414. And it had been leaking for quite a while. So I don't know, other than it was not reported in 60 days and the plumber had said that it went into the wastewater. So I was,
For those two reasons, I move to deny.
okay,
Staff's recommendation.
you have a second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. This is Doug.
Thank you. Any discussion? Motion has been made and approved.
Amber, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
I think she unmuted.
Okay.
Yes, it was fine.
And what was your vote on the last one, Amber?
I think she got a yes.
Oh, I didn't hear anything from it. Okay.
Nope.
Amber? Can you turn up your volume, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's,
There you
I thought it was high.
There you are. You're good. You're good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the Sultana residents. Next.
This is Doug. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes, Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I looked at this one and I'd kind of done an analysis in my head which way I was leaning. And preliminarily, I asked Tessa to look up if these folks are on Ion Water. And it turns out they are. I didn't ask you, Tessa, how long they'd been on Ion Water. What I was thinking is if they weren't on Ion Water and this leak had been in leak status for quite a while, but all they had was their bill to try to surmise what was going on, it would be a great opportunity to sign them up for Ion Water and sort of nudge them that they need to be looking at the Ion Water frequently to avoid this, long-term leak situation. But it turns out they are on Ion Water. Tessa, do you know how long they've been signed up? I forgot to ask you that.
I don't off the top of my head.
Hmm.
I can see if
Okay.
I can find out.
All right. Well, while you do this, this is kind of a tough one because, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that no matter what we decide, these folks will pay for every drop of water they use. So they're only going to get relief from the sewer portion that was not used under this circumstance. So it kind of comes down to almost comes down to our 10-day policy of, leak repair. Leak repairs should be made within 10 days of discovery. And if you notice in our form, it used the word expects. The city expects it to be repaired within 10 days. In the law, there's a big difference between expects and shall, which means we have discretion here to do what we need to do. So, I know I'm kind of beating around the bush, but this one's kind of interesting because Tessa says the record reflects that it's been in leak status a long time. The other thing that we need to consider is they're only going to get 90 days no matter what. So I know I threw out a lot of considerations there, but I'm kind of leaning towards either going back and asking them when they discovered the leak, if they're willing to state that, or give them the 90 days.
Right. Well, Doug, when I read it, it did say that the leak was for over a year. And it was because the owner left a faucet on. Now, it's a perfect example for a eye on water. Your faucet on, the next month, it would just be, hey, you got a leak.
Sorry to interrupt, Scott. The faucet is the
It is the
third
next one.
request.
Yeah, that's not-
I'm
that's not
sorry,
this
I'm
one.
sorry. Okay, the next one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this one 100% qualifies for relief under our criteria. We're only talking about span of time here.
I see. Okay, I got the two confused.
So, yeah, again, they're gonna pay for all the water they use all the way back for the whole period of the leak, because that's our policy. And so, what they're asking for is obviously for relief from the sewage use, which under these leak circumstances, they didn't use. I'm inclined to either ask them when they discover the leak, or in the alternative, give them the maximum of 90-day relief, which isn't going to cover the amount of the leak period, but that is our maximum period that we give for relief.
It looks like during March, there wouldn't be much relief compared to last year, only a little bit. 805 to 884, it looks like, so about $79. And then next 2 months look like about $700 in total. So looking at about $800 for 90 days. I move that we give them 90 days relief based on when it looks like they filed, and when the receipt, the work order invoice from Evans Plumbing, when they came out, they were well within the 10 days. And I think that the 90 days probably
Good.
reasonable in this case. So I move to give them relief for the 90-day period that they are entitled to.
And I'll second that. This is Doug.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
I
Aye.
Amber?
Aye.
Okay, motion has been moved and approved.
Okay, good.
Okay, so now we're talking.
now the faucet.
Now the faucet. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, properties, home properties. Okay, so
What were you saying about the faucet?
Well, I just said that it was, the owner left the faucet on, so that would be a tremendously a good example of having eye on water, because that would have been an immediate notice. Because it would be a constant, but that's kind of like a self-induced problem. I mean, it's an owner problem.
Yeah, I don't know that it qualifies as even a leak. You know, it's not a leak. It's a
Me neither, yeah.
unintended,
Right, just,
forgot to.
yeah.
He left the iron on, you know. Not
Exactly.
paying for his electricity.
Yeah, I don't think, you
do I
know,
have a motion?
I move to deny.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion has been approved. Okay,
good.
guys, thank you. All right. We have guests today, and thank you for coming, Dan, Katie, and Wanda. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Beautiful.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good. My name is Dan Blue, and I'm the Government and Community Relations Manager for Recology, Oregon. And I'll let you two introduce yourselves.
I'm Rhonda Green. I am the Waste Zero sustainability person for Recology, Western Oregon, both coast and the valley.
Beautiful.
And I'm Katie Hardesty. I'm the operations supervisor for Recology here on the coast.
Thank you for being.
Thank you. So I've been with Recology for about 6 weeks, but 23 years in the solid waste and recycling industry.
Okay.
I managed a research unit at Portland State University that looked at recycling and sustainability issues, and did a lot of work all over the Portland metro region. And then I became the solid waste administrator for the city of Gresham for 8 years. And then most recently I was at Metro Regional Government as a systems planning manager for Metro Solid Waste Division. And so I've got 23 years of experience. I think Rhonda has
In my
18,
18th year with Recology.
Right.
and then Katie has 10 years with Recology. So you have a pretty good panel of folks with
You bet.
really strong policy, recycling, waste prevention, operations, customer service, community outreach and education. So you got a pretty good team in front of you today. Really happy to be
Yeah,
here.
I always call that tribal knowledge. You know.
And, I've been on the public government side for the entirety of my career, except for 6 weeks. And I just want to say Recology is the only employee-owned garbage company in Oregon and the largest employee-owned garbage and recycling company in the nation. And I'm super happy to be, representing the company today. So we had received some questions in advance, but we thought we would maybe just start off with talking a little bit about recyclables and what happens to them once they are dropped off at either the curb in a cart or like a recycling depot like you have here in Cannon Beach, and where those materials go. And I can kind of, is that okay with you, Chair?
Sure.
To do that approach? And I didn't plan a formal presentation, but I have been in most of the material recovery facilities in the state of Oregon. They're primarily in the Portland metro area. And these are large facilities that have been around for 30 plus years. And most of the recyclables from the state of Oregon end up at one of 6 facilities in the Portland metro area. And I think our stuff goes to
Correct.
West Rock or
Or Pioneer.
Pioneer.
Pioneer West Rock.
And then also some of it I know goes to EFI. I don't know if the coast materials go there, but these are facilities that receive mixed recyclables, the stuff that you put into the roll cart at your residence, perhaps. They receive material that is sorted to some degree, like cardboard that, from a cardboard dumpster at your depot, glass, which is often collected separately, goes into these facilities, and depending on what the material stream is, ends up in these mechanical and hand sorting systems. And they use machines, they use optical sorters, they use magnets, they use something called an eddy current to separate out aluminum. They use jets of air to blow different types of materials to different types of bins. And all of this results in some cases a revenue being generated. Like right now, cardboard, I think, is around $60 a ton. Baled, if it's sent directly to a mill, we're getting about $60 a ton. But the mixed recycling that you put in the curbside roll cart is actually incurring a processing cost. And in the last year, we saw costs as high as $108 a ton to sort that material. So it's not a revenue generator, that mixed recycling cart. Metal has very low value, even if it's separated. Aluminum tends to have a higher value if it's separated. So it's, when we collect this material, it goes through a very complicated process. It has trucking costs, fuel costs, labor costs, equipment, processing costs. And, all those at the end of the day, back in the old days, we might earn $20 or $30 overall per ton. In today's market, it's a cost center for us. It's still better to recycle than to put it in the landfill. From a greenhouse gas emission perspective, from a resource conservation perspective, it's still the right thing to do to recycle. But it's not as if we as a company are making money off of recycling at this point. I think that's fair to say.
You have to pay to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Take it there. So
So people always ask, like, what are the things that we can do to improve recycling? And the very best thing that the consumer can do is make good choices when you're at the grocery store. When you're getting that cup of coffee, hopefully you use a reusable cup, bring your reusable grocery bag. If you do purchase things that are in recyclable containers, only put those things that actually are allowed to go into the cart or into the bin. That helps us in terms of the back end processing. It also prevents a lot of material going to the landfill that could otherwise have been recycled because maybe a cart or a container is too overly contaminated to even sort it out.
Mhm.
So good choices by the consumer and the customers of the system in terms of putting materials in the right bin, not doing wishful recycling. Like, gosh, I hope this clamshell can get recycled, even though it doesn't say to put it in the cart. I'm going to put it in anyway. That's really a big challenge in the system, is all that wishful recycling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a little bit of an overview. We as a company do a lot of education and outreach. I think we do tabling. We have a number of materials. Rhonda, maybe you could add some, additional content about what we do to help educate.
So we do, we have our you know, we do a lot of tabling at like Clatsop County Fair. I've been out here a couple of times.
Okay.
We do direct flyers, direct contamination postcards twice a year to all of Recology Western Oregon. Once a week, I go through and run a report off the recycle trucks and send like a personal postcard to like Ms. Hardesty. This is your contamination was, please don't, you know, bag your plastic, your commingle in plastic bags. And that goes directly to the address from me so that they know, okay, somebody's actually keeping an eye on this. We have a whatbin.com. I don't know if anybody down here is familiar with it. So yeah, so I'm on the back end of this. So if there's anything you search that isn't there, just shoot me an email and say, hey, Rhonda, I searched for XYZ. I didn't see it. And then I can add it to the search engine so that the consumer or whoever, the recycler can go in and say, if you say plastic ware or plastic, it's going to give you a whole list of plastic items, eating utensils, clamshells, that kind of a thing. A lot of our problem here are the day trippers and the tourists, because everybody recycles different in different areas of Oregon. That's going to change with DEQ and the new bill that is coming in, where everybody will recycle the same commodities straight across the board in the state of Oregon. And then they have the proof in packaging, where the little arrow on the bottom of the container doesn't mean it's a recyclable commodity. It means it's manufactured from recycled commodities. So that arrow on the bottom with the number is the resin code that tells the recycle facility. So when we have a full load, we take it to the processor. That arrow tells them what that product's made out of, not the fact that it's a recyclable commodity. So if you look at the bottom of a clamshell, it will show you the recycle arrow. That just tells somebody what that's made of. Currently, those aren't recyclable in our market. Other areas in Oregon that it is. The reason being is that it melts at a different, so that when they're incinerated, those containers become an ash kind of type product, different from, so they melt at a lower temperature than say a laundry detergent jug. So what happens is when you get this beautiful product and then you dump it into a vat that has ash on the bottom, you then get an inferior product. I wish I would have brought my wine glass. I actually have a wine glass that I've had for years. I didn't know what was wrong with it. I just thought it was really cool. And it has a piece of Pyrex right in the glass. So it was a contaminated product that actually made it through and was recycled into this wine glass. The Pyrex is a perfectly round, right in the middle of the glass. So yeah, so I audit your recycling. Occasionally when I go to the Valley, I will run by and recycle it on site here. I do audit it as it comes into the transfer station once a month. So I'm familiar with what Cannon Beach needs to know when this goes out. So that way it can be more specific. I've also have some of the hotels around here have the PDF of this document that they're actually handing out now with the rental agreement, and it's online. So when someone calls up and wants to rent a condo or a house, this is part of their welcome to Cannon Beach packet. They get a copy of the PDF. So hopefully, I mean, I've noticed a little a downtick in things like plastic in the plastic bags in the 30 yard when it comes in.
Say clamshell, are you talking what we often see at Costco where
Mhm.
case
They're plastic.
Yes, plastic. Yeah.
proof container?
Yes, those.
I get a lot of questions from people asking me what happens to that when it's dropped off. And so you just addressed.
Right. When it's, so we're allowed a certain percentage of contamination in the load, but that you get to that number really quickly when you're talking about a whole community. So yes, I see a lot of that, a lot of
A
them,
lot of that, just because we have a Costco nearby,
right?
those questions come in a lot. With the DEQ changes that are coming,
Mhm.
are they going to kind of go after some of those big box stores and get them to use recyclable materials, or what's the idea with that?
So the proof in packaging, I think you can probably speak a little more.
Not very much.
Okay, so the proof in packaging that is eventually going to become part of our lives
Okay.
is, it's a bill where it's very vague to me still. So I make clamshells
Uh-huh.
and I say they're recyclable.
Uh-huh.
And I sell them to Katie, who then puts her berries and stuff in it. And then Dan collects them, right?
Okay,
So Dan says to Katie, well, I'm buying these for you. You tell me they're recyclable, right?
Mhm.
But they're not. So then he comes to me, the manufacturer, and says, okay, they say they're recyclable on the bottom. So now you have to find me the market
aha,
to get to recycle these, or you have to buy them back from me.
aha.
So that's kind of how it's going to work. There'll be different things that come into play there as far as grants for trucking this stuff to different areas and that kind of a thing. Because clamshells,
Calls.
Yeah.
And
right.
kind of some of these things, but I hadn't actually got
Yes.
that answer.
So that's what's going on. So when this comes full circle,
Right.
the proof in packaging will be if you say, Rhonda Green, this is a recyclable commodity, you have to either know it's recyclable and can tell me where I can recycle it, or you have to purchase it back from me.
Interesting. That's good.
So it'll be nice. That along with the fact that Oregon's going to go straight across the board will cut down on a lot of what goes on, a lot of the contamination.
I think there are some legislation happening around better labeling.
Yes.
So I think that's part of
Yes.
that
Hmm.
package. So it should be a
Right.
little bit clearer what's recyclable and what's not. And, you know, the thing that I take away from experience is that if there's no market, it may be perfectly recyclable, like 100% recyclable material. But if there's no market for it, then the processors aren't going to invest the equipment and the time to be able to manage that
And
process.
do they end up in a landfill because of that? Okay.
Mostly they should, because there's not a way to,
No incentive, no
Right.
incentive. Okay.
yeah, just like the clamshells, they're not part of our program.
Wow.
Not in our curbside program. They're not at our.
I just learned something because I've always thought the clamshell, I always put it in recycle.
Right.
And I thought, hey, I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing a good thing. So I didn't know that. That's something. And then I just saw it, Walmart no longer has bags.
Right.
And your own or you're done.
So Walmart and Target had a little bit of an issue with their bag program in the Midwest.
Okay.
And they were collecting them and bailing them and then shipping them off. But the processor in the Midwest was landfilling them.
Wow.
And the way they found them was that some, like, hey, let me be a eye in the sky reporter. And I'm going to get a little computer chip and I'm going to go around and put these things. And that's what they did. And then they followed these chips to this processing plant in the Midwest.
Oh,
And we're like, oh, well, here's the deal. So we see what's really going on here.
it's good because that's all kind of like discovery. You know, you're discovering things. Now we can fix it.
Right.
You know, yeah,
And
that's very good.
you talked, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, thank you for all this great information.
Sure.
Incredible.
We learned a lot. Steve, do you have any questions?
I submitted a couple earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I can reference those. So regarding the depot, the recycling depot here in Cannon Beach is owned by the city of Cannon Beach.
Okay.
Ecology provides dumpsters, containers for collecting a variety of materials. I think there's mixed recycling. I think there's glass, yard debris,
Cardboard.
cardboard. Thank you. So those materials are collected. We remove or empty those containers on some periodic basis.
Right.
That material is sent to material recovery facility for further processing. I know the question of deposit containers came up. There's a deposit program statewide. It's part of the Oregon Bottle Bill, which was the first in the country. The containers have a 10-cent deposit, which is paid by the consumer. And then a back-end system has been set up by the Oregon Beverage and Recycling Corporation, OBRC, and they manage the deposit system. We have nothing to do with that deposit container system. In fact, if someone puts a deposit container, that consumer puts the can into a recycling bin, we are prohibited by state law from redeeming that deposit. So aluminum can would be recycled at the material recovery facility for the very modest value of aluminum for whatever the market is paying at that time. So that aluminum is one of the commodities that has some value. It helps to offset those processing costs that I was talking about earlier. Across the state, there are depots, there are facilities, in fact, our own transfer station in McMinnville, where we set aside space at our recycling drop-off center for people to place deposit containers that they would like to donate to either a person who needs them or a nonprofit or a school. Bag containers use the blue bag program, which nonprofits can take. And so it's a pretty common practice for beverage containers, deposit containers to be taken by individuals or nonprofits or churches or schools. And the person who actually paid for that deposit at the grocery store is making a conscientious decision to hand that deposit over to either, like I said, a nonprofit or an individual. We don't have any problem with that. Our interest is in community safety. We prohibit anybody from going into one of our containers. Once someone puts something into a roll cart or into a dumpster, the material inside that container becomes our company's property.
Great.
But beyond that, we don't have any stake in the game in terms of the deposit containers. So
Comes your liability once you send those.
if you're entering into a container,
Right.
it's dangerous. And the last thing in the world we would ever want is to, and this happens sometimes, is to people get, picked up by a front load truck and go into the back of a hopper and get crushed to death. It unfortunately is something that actually does happen. And that's part of why those laws are set up that way.
And to make it very, very clear, if I take a redeemable, had 10 cents on it and put it into my recycling.
Yep.
Picked up by Recology.
Yep.
Going into the dump station, then that is it's gone and recycled.
You just
recycle.
Gets a deposit.
threw that deposit 10 cents away. Yes, correct.
Okay, very good. Now, if somebody brings something into the station directly
Mhm.
and puts it in, then it's the same thing, right?
Right. Once it becomes, so it's actually ownership is how they.
Okay, very good. That's excellent.
So if I own the project because I paid the 10-cent redeemable, whatever, and I go to the depot and I put it into the drop box.
Right.
Once I let go of it, ownership becomes that of Recology.
Right.
And again, there's a state law that prohibits us to redeem that.
Correct. So that's not a money making. It just goes into recycling. No one gets
It's a fractional value to us compared to the 10 cents.
That 10 cents is recoverable or kept by the soda pop companies or the bottle companies, correct? So they either retain that because it's thrown away, or they are reimbursed the customer.
It goes, that 10 cents is retained by the Oregon Beverage and Recycling Corporation, which sets up the recycling bottle drops that are around the state.
Yeah, you have to go to the station and put it in. Yeah.
The benefit still to not claiming that 10 cents for the health of the system, is that correct?
Is there benefits?
So is the system healthier if I don't get my 10 cents back or if I do?
So the system, going back to why it was set up in the first place, was a litter control measure initially.
Right.
Because people were just throwing their beer and pop cans on the side of the road. So
That I see when we have people hanging around the recycle facility,
Mhm.
then those items that are brought to the recycle facility are already in the recycle stream. So-
correct.
So then the individual takes that out of the recycled stream and then benefits himself or throws it on the side of the street. We really don't know what he does with it, right? He or she does with it. So we're allowing people to take these 10-cent things out of the recycle stream,
Yeah, so
doing whatever they would like to do with them.
my experience is that with people going after bottle deposit containers is that they are redeeming them at a very high rate. And in fact, the state of Oregon's,
Is it 100%?
it's really darn close to 100%.
So
Part of
losing a
It's that 10-cent deposit.
A couple of percent, a small percent of a big number is still a big number, right?
So if let me walk you through it, sir. If I take,
You keep interrupting me.
Go ahead.
Train of thought. So if we're losing a couple of percent because we're allowing people to take out of the recycle stream
Mhm.
a large amount of aluminum or bottles, whatever, for that 10-cent program.
Yeah.
That's really not, that's cutting into the efficiency.
So if someone takes the deposit container from a person who paid for that deposit container, that person hands them that deposit container. And that second person who takes it, who might be at the recycling depot, for example, that person is going to go redeem it for the 10 cents. That material will stay in the recycling system. So it's not actually getting lost.
Right. Because you just said we lose a couple of percent.
No, I think the couple of percent losses ends up in the garbage or ends up on the side of the road and is not redeemed. I think the majority of people that are participating in either directly redeeming their 10 cents or the folks who indirectly get those containers and redeem them, they're doing it for a reason, which is to redeem that 10 cents.
Their intention is,
So I
but I don't have a microchip that I put in there.
Because Amber has had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Oh, she does. Okay.
Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the Recology people for explaining last sentiment there. I think that the issue that our committee is bringing up is just kind of a classist issue of being upset about somebody coming and trying to make a buck when in fact it's just an issue of somebody who is quite hard up and making a few cents on a way to maybe not have any money during late stage life and trying to pay for their life. And unfortunately, if my 10 cents that I paid on a bottle or paid on a can is paying for food on the table, I have no problem with that because I would happily give over my cans. And so I'm happy to know that Recology has no problem with that as long as somebody is not digging in a recycling bin. So I just want to say thank you for that explanation there and that there's no loss in the system.
Thank you,
Well,
Amber.
there's a loss to the program, and here's how that works, Amber. If somebody is standing at the recycle facility and taking items intended for the recycling, in other words, they're already in the stream, and not going into the garbage up and down the coast where the tourists leave cans just sitting there, they're easier pickings, actually, I think, than him sitting over and begging over at the recycle center. Because as a ranger at Ecola and all the way down to Oz West, so several years ago, I can tell you that those cans and bottles are not being recycled. And in my opinion, the intent of the recycle program is to take those items that would otherwise not be recycled and give incentive to people to pull them out of the waste stream and put them in the recycle stream, and not to stand at the recycle stream and take them out of the recycle stream and drive them down the block and get the 10 cents for them. So he's perfectly able to work. He's in no different shape than anybody else his age. He has all the
Stop you guys.
state,
just because-
he has all the state benefits of anybody else his age.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I understand, but we're not here to discuss an individual. We are just here to get.
No,
some
I'm talking about the
information.
program, what the program is intended to do.
I think your feeling is that you would like to have people go up and down the coast and recover those cans, which I totally
As
agree with,
intended.
as intended, but we are, right now, we're talking about an individual or individuals that are sitting outside our recycling center. As long as you guys do not have an issue and there's not a legal issue, that was my concern, and that's no longer my concern.
Yeah, Chair, and just to be clear,
Very good.
when it is redeemed, it doesn't matter who does the redeeming. It is 100% going into the recycling system and it is getting recovered as a recyclable material.
I was following down the street and stuff blowing out of his truck onto the side of the road after he leaves the recycle center. So there's the percentage that's leaving the recycle, ending up on the side of the road because driving down 101 with shit blowing out of his back of his pickup, and then going and recycling what's left after it blows all out.
So
That's
that's
the
a
issue that I
different
have.
issue, then we need to talk to PD.
Well, I'm talking to the ecology people about, what's going on with the recyclables that are leaving the recycle stream
But I don't think.
into personal hands
Right.
and then not
Okay.
getting back into it.
Unfortunately, once they don't have any part of it, unfortunately, but we could talk to PD and say, hey.
They need to
can you
understand the
please-
issues too.
Yes, but I don't think they're here for that.
Is there any other questions that we haven't answered?
An observation I had at Fresh Foods, which is right on, Hemlock and in Warren Way. They have now a little sign up there. It says, if you did not pay for this deposit, we will not give you a refund.
They're
Now-
under no obligation. to do
Now,
that.
there's no application. I think it's just a warning. I mean, there's no way to know, that you didn't pay for that. But what they're trying to do is, I think, just say, hey, look, we don't want you being pirates.
Mhm.
You know, we don't like the pirate, but it's so interesting to know that if they do redeem it, it goes in recycling, so nobody's hurt. Nobody. I mean, in fact, the system actually is adding value because more things are getting recycled.
And there's a tremendous amount of nonprofit benefit. So
Okay, all right. Okay,
Well, and Jose, the manager of Crest
Okay,
Foods,
so we-
put that sign up there because Lance was overwhelming.
okay, all right, okay.
did you have a question too?
Yeah, I have one last question for your team.
Yeah.
You guys, when Carl was here, he gave me a rough estimate of
I saw the sign.
percentage of the debris, and I say debris in a general term, of recycling that you guys pick up actually go into a landfill because people aren't recycling properly, like rinsing their containers and things, and it creates a bacteria or whatever where you can't recycle it. Do you guys have any idea? Is that improving as a result of your campaign to try to help people know how to?
Last I heard, the numbers are lower, but that was, right after Carl left, the numbers
Right.
have gone.
Mhm.
Okay,
I've noticed it as well, just in the collection, the curbside collection from the residents. It's just been overall cleaner
yeah,
out of the truck. So,
Good,
good.
yeah. it's-
yeah.
We,
But I've seen nationally contamination rates as high as 50%. Oregon tends to have some of the cleanest recycling at the curb, primarily because of our, historical environmental commitment. And we were the earliest curbside recycling programs in the nation started in Oregon. And so we kind of have a long history of trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
And so our contamination rates statewide tend to be lower than most of the rest of the country.
Yeah.
But we still have a long ways to go. Please keep your plastic bags out. They get wrapped around all the trommels and we literally have to shut down the recycling facilities to cut those plastic bags off by hand.
Uh-huh.
So go ahead, sorry.
Ask for a day. Amber? You're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was actually curious about something that we haven't talked about, which is, I don't know if anybody saw it, but this last week, there was an article in the New Yorker that talked about New York and it talked about South Korea, and it was talking about food waste and how food waste is actually powering South Korea because they have kind of zero food waste as part of their recycling program. And they actually turn it into energy for the city. And I was actually wondering how progressives Recology is going in terms of being a little bit, just a little bit more creative in terms of how they're thinking about, given that we do have growing population, we have growing waste, we have, not so tidy people around how we think about what we're putting into our bins. And I'm just curious to know in terms of, and I'm sorry that I didn't get my question in yesterday before 3:00.
That's fine.
I'm just curious to know some of the thoughts and ideas there so that we can educate kind of people who might be listening into this call.
Yeah, sure. So generally food waste, it's a question around food waste. Recology operates 3 organics processing facilities and 2 of them process both residential and commercial food waste, our Recology North Plains facility and our Recology Almsville facility. We don't have any facilities in Oregon that do, anaerobic digestion or methane generation that we operate. I know there have been programs like that in Oregon. Food waste is the 30% of the commercial waste stream is still food waste. And it is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions through the creation of methane gas, which if it does get into that landfill, either has to be flared. In some cases, that gas is captured and used to make electricity. But it's far better from a life cycle analysis perspective and a greenhouse gas emission perspective to not waste food in the first place. So food storage in your refrigerator, food storage in your kitchen, eat that food, don't let it go to waste. That's the best thing you can do instead of trying to deal with it downstream.
And I want to do a shout out. I volunteer to the food pantry every Wednesday and we get deliveries from Costco, Fred Meyer, Safeway, everybody close to expiration dates that are then given to people that need them. And we feed like 175 people a week, 50 some families. And so we have all kinds of things that are going on that are both conserving the food and the recycling. So, in a way, I think that those are working well.
So I guess to Amber's question, we can deal with food at the end of its life stream, but it's far more costly and far more
Correct.
environmentally impactful.
Use it.
Try to deal with it at the back end. It is far better for us to consume the food that we make at the front end.
Amen.
Our bodies are very efficient
Agree.
processors of food. And so that's the best thing we can do from an environmental perspective.
No problem. That's right.
Sure.
Oh, amazing.
Can I
This-
take questions from the audience right now, or
Well, I think Jan has a question.
can I take
Doug has
questions
a
from
question.
the?
Your prerogative if you'd like to.
So let's go with Doug first.
Yeah, this is more editorial than anything else, you know, thinking back to the aluminum cans that we just discussed in detail. You know, you have the one issue about who gets it, who benefits, who owns it, which I think are important questions. But I think probably a lot of you may know this, but I think it's extremely important as to aluminum cans that we come as close as possible to 100% getting back into the recycle system.
Mhm.
Because if you've looked at the statistics about what it takes to make new aluminum from the original ore, the amount of energy and electricity that takes compared to recycling an existing piece of aluminum, it's just exponential. So we want to eliminate as much as possible manufacturing new aluminum cans. It takes a tremendous amount of energy all the way from the mining to the smelting of aluminum. So that to me is the most important goal. Is got to get 100% as close as possible back into the system when it comes to aluminum cans. And when it comes to recycling as a whole, it's kind of interesting because, you know, being my age, I remember, you know, when I was a young kid, everything went into one can. It was called the garbage. And then the recycling movement started, which is great. And it seems like there might have been a shift here where there was a real push of, you know, recycle everything, you know, and they'd monitor it and this and that. And I think something may be catching up to us a little bit. And the folks from Recology, you made an interesting point that there's a lot of material out there, or there's at least some material out there that's definitely recyclable and should be recycled, but it's not recyclable because there's no market. And which means we've got items going to the landfill that really should be recycled, but economically there's no vendor or depository out there. And I don't think that's anybody's fault, but I'm wondering if that's just maybe a larger governmental goal where that needs to be cured. And so I'd only just be curious as to what the Recology people see that. I know we can't do much of that at the local level, but maybe at the more national level about getting or creating markets for these items that are recyclable, but aren't being recycled.
Doug, that's going to be one of your things to start doing.
Right. And I think a term, Janae,
Thank you for the commentary.
and I think a term is repurposed. I think if we just, you recycle, but repurpose, let's work on that. That's what Doug's saying, repurpose that. And so if it's not incentive with cost, it goes into the landfill, but let's see if we can't repurpose some of that.
So,
There is,
sorry, I just want to say something about Recology because, you know, we're based out of San Francisco and our slogan is waste zero. So starting in San Francisco, we want nothing going to a landfill. That's the goal.
Right, that's our.
So
Actually, yes.
innovation that's going on in San Francisco with food waste and how they're separating these really cool grinders that take food and then pull the plastic bag out of it. It's just really cool stuff going on. It's going to be a while before it filters out, you know, because the capacity to be able to do that here, you know, that's a huge cost. So, but Recology is very environmentally very forward. We don't want anything going to a landfill. That's the ultimate goal.
Super.
So,
and to the question, you're familiar with the Oregon eCycles program. It's where any kind of electronic equipment can go back to a drop-off center. When you buy a TV or you buy a piece of electronic equipment, you pay a fee, kind of like your deposit on your deposit containers. That fee is set up to have a take-back program. It's called extended producer responsibility. So the manufacturer, the seller charges that fee to the consumer. That little fee is used to provide free drop-off, free recycling of all of those electronic devices. And the intent of that was an environmental intent to get that material out of the streams, out of the garbage, where it causes damage. That extended producer responsibility program is currently in front of Oregon legislature, just recently was in front of the Oregon legislature through the Recycling Modernization Act, where they are going to set up the same kind of system where the producer of that material has a responsibility to ensure that their packaging materials are being recycled and recovered. So that's going to provide an influx of resources. You know, it's going to come out of our pocket. So when we make a decision to buy something, there's going to be a little bit of extra cost there, but it's going to come back to providing opportunities to more effectively recover and recycle those materials.
Great.
So it has the impact of getting the consumer to maybe make better decisions at the grocery store, at the shopping, at the mall. But it also sets up a system to take that material back and recover more of it. And so I think that's probably the wave of the future is, around those kinds of extended producer responsibility laws. So, and that's happening around the country as well. Sorry.
This is Doug with a final comment. That was very insightful.
Sorry for a second. Jan has had her hand up for
Yeah,
a while.
let's do.
Can we go with Jan?
Well, I just want to follow up on what he just said, and then I'm done. That was an excellent point, and that may be the future solution as
Yes.
opposed to creating a market using producer responsibility to make up in these gap areas, particularly like electronics and so forth. So that was interesting. That may be the way to solve it is everybody's got to pay a little bit extra to ensure a closer, net zero environment. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna go to Jan and then we're gonna go to Amber and then we need to wrap it up on this recology.
So I just wanted to say, I'm really glad you guys are here. It's fabulous to hear from you about all this. And I'm just wondering if there might be a way, someone brought this idea to me recently. How can we recycle more from our visitors here? Because a lot of them they don't go to our recycling center. That's more
Right.
residents, in my experience. But I'm just wondering what kind of a program we might be able to have here, like I think they do in other places, maybe in Portland, where the visitors could have an easy way to separate their garbage when they're leaving the beach, not just put everything in one, but to recycle. I wonder what we could do.
Well, part of that's what Rhonda said, the PDF will help, people coming here, but we do have day visitors. And so, it is something else, but that's a good start with the PDF, showing people what to do.
Right.
They're visitors coming in through it. And other than that, I don't know if you set up other deposit areas or who knows.
Your flyers and your pamphlets are very.
Yeah, the flyers and the pamphlets.
Those are in the vacation rentals.
Right.
And so Andrew that runs our
Yes.
depot sees a lot of the people that are overnighters here. And a good example of reuse is they often want to drop off their styrofoam ice chest. And we don't recycle styrofoam at this time, but Andrew will hang on to those because people will come looking for an ice chest. They've caught fish or something and they're looking. And so he will give that to them. So he has his own little reuse instead of letting people put it in the
Sure.
trash.
Right.
So those are effective, but Jan makes a good point. People that are day trippers that are not spending the
Yeah.
night here
Right.
are probably the most challenged, but typically they hit one of our restaurants to get something to eat or drink. And those restaurants often have dual containers. As you know, space is really limited here. And so getting the room to be able to do recycle and trash and getting people to not put trash in the wrong container is a challenge. So Jan's point is well taken, but we're lucky that we do capture a lot of our hotel folks and vacation rentals through your campaign.
Yeah, and even at the post office, it's posted there in a lot of places. And I see around town, the little trash recycle.
Mhm.
So it is, pretty visible. So where somebody can put it into the recycle. And I've looked in there and it's kind of full. So some people are using it, the visual.
Yeah, Portland Airport has a split container, so it's one bin, but it has a split down it and you can
Yeah.
put things in. There's labor associated with that. There's costs to that. So,
Yes.
Most likely come up with that.
Yeah.
And then we would have to pay,
Yeah.
we would have to pay. So there's a lot of costs involved and
Yes.
I think that's another topic.
Another topic. This has been incredible. Go ahead, yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to say two things, I guess. One is just kind of to what Karen was just saying, which is I do think that if we want to solve the day tripper issue and be better about recycling, that like many cities, we have to provide the receptacles that are separated. And I don't think that that's something that is too out of reach for us to do in our community, given that we do advertise and we draw people here in high numbers all the time and all summer. So I feel like that's the very least that we could do. But that's something we can work on and get better at over time. And then the second thing, I guess, is more to the Recology, because I am from San Francisco and I've spent the better part of the last 25 years there. And one of the things that I would say, and I'm curious about, is if Recology is about zero waste, and this is kind of a larger question to Recology as a whole, is if the tagline is about having people have zero waste, if you don't have a Recology account, is it really about having zero waste?
If you don't have a Recology account, is
Yeah,
it about
I
zero
used-
waste?
Yeah, so I had a friend who was a resident of Moss Beach.
Mhm.
Because I used to live in Moss Beach, California. And I had a friend who was, in her 80s. She didn't believe in having garbage and using the garbage. She was an avid composter. She didn't believe in landfills. And she was probably one of the most environmental people I ever knew. And she didn't believe in using Recology. And Recology put a lien on her house because she didn't have a Recology account. She was all about zero waste and she fought it.
Mhm.
And so I just think that Recology should really stand behind its tagline. If
Yeah,
it's really about zero waste.
I really appreciate that. And, we are a private company and we provide a service to municipalities up and down the West Coast. And we do charge people for services. That's how we are able to provide.
Yes.
Garbage started as a sanitation thing, a health and sanitation issue. It has evolved over the last 30 years. Our company is committed to waste zero. That's the concept. I can tell you, it is a very large challenge to get to waste zero. And so in the meantime, we are committed to providing safe services, good customer service to our customers. I'm sorry to hear about this person's home. I don't know the individual details of that case. That's probably in a regulated environment. So there are, jurisdictional laws, I'm sure, that were in place there. I don't know how that worked.
Some cities require that's mandatory service. Like we don't have a choice to say, okay, you don't want it. That's fine. It's a
Yeah.
mandatory service.
So
Correct. I think it's just more about, my point was just about the fact that we should be encouraging people, if they live simply and they don't contribute to landfills, that we should be incentivizing. That was my point, not to try to scold or shame Recology. It was more that we incentivize the right behavior.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it is an uphill battle to create behavior change. And we're in a very consumer driven society. It's how we operate. I hear you on that. And I can say though, getting to meet the people that I work with here in Oregon, that this group is committed to sustainable practices. We are committed to reducing waste. I would love to have us not charge for garbage service, but charge for recycling and waste prevention and education and outreach. That would be fantastic, that if we could make our money that way. But at this point, we're still collecting a lot of garbage.
Right, but I love your mission and your objectives. That is what really counts. Your mission is zero landfill.
Mhm.
I love that.
I've been here a long time with Recology back in the WOW days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of an overall, wow, this is really cool. We had two routes when I started, recycle routes, NS for the north section, and then the south section, right? So we had these two sections, 2 men, 2 rear load recycle trucks, right? With the little bins, remember the little yellow bins said wow on the side? And we averaged about maybe a ton of recycle a week, maybe in, recyclable commodities. Then we decided that, let's do this. Let's go all in. Let's buy these carts. give everybody a cart,
Mhm.
see what happens, right? So not knowing really what would happen, it was like shocking because our trash volume went down and our recycling went through the roof. So it was not anything that we thought would even happen, right? You're budgeting for all this. Well, this might happen or this might, but from going from here, it went this way. So it was huge and it came, then we got to where it was like 1 or 2 tons a day. And then every day we would add, because we only ran recycle once a week, right? 1 day a week in the North County, 1 day a week in the South County.
Right.
And now we run a recycle route 2 recycle routes every day. And that's mixed recycling. That's not including our glass route and our cardboard route. So it's been a huge change over the last 18 years. Rob.
That right there is a proof that your trash went down, your recycling went through the roof,
Yes,
and it's working.
yes.
Great.
Okay, I think Steve
So,
has some
yeah.
comment.
Just to Doug's point a little bit earlier about the value of aluminum, years ago, it was in the
Yeah.
90s, I lived in a small town in Utah, and in order for them to promote the recycling, one of the things they said was that if everybody on the route just had 1 aluminum can to contribute to the recycling, it would pay for the amount of gas it took to drive that vehicle around. Now, I'm not sure of the accuracy of that statement, but what it does say is that aluminum does have a lot of value, and to manufacture that aluminum takes a lot of energy. And to Katie's point a little bit earlier, and something Amber was
Mhm.
touching on about the composting, you know, there's a lot to composting of the food waste and capturing that methane and have it be a marketable commodity. The methane that comes off that food waste is usually a very low BTU and has to be mixed with utility gas at a rate where the BTU is a burnable commodity when it reaches your burner tip. And also the tariffs sometimes have to be changed with the utility companies so that they can accept a low BTU, that they have a plan for mixing that in with their regular mined commodity. So just a couple of points there that I wanted to make.
Good, good.
All right, well, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
It's been great seeing
I know, I know. Are you still doing Relay for Life?
a lot of things.
Yeah, we haven't had a team in a few years.
Yeah, that's right. It's one of the
Yeah.
things.
This was a teachable moment. I got a lot out of this. I really did.
Big deal. Well, I'm gonna leave these for you.
Thank you.
They're the different flyers. This is also, I can get these in a poster. So if you decide, so Nehalem Bay State Park does mixed recycling in the summertime. This is in like a 3x5 foot on the side of their
Okay.
container.
Good.
So it's got the grommets in it, and then we just
Okay.
zip tied it to the container. So any of these things I can get for you in a larger capacity that we can. And I also have stickers that can go on the top of carts. So when you get your new recycle cart, it's got that pretty sticker.
Right.
Those come off. I have more of those. So if you need anything like that, just shoot me an email and
Great.
I want to thank you guys.
Oh, yeah.
A great partner to the city. You're very responsive. Anytime we have a resident concern or issue, you guys are very responsive and we appreciate that very much. You guys do provide good service and
Mhm.
valued as a business partner to the city. So thank you. Thank-
And I like you fellas just twice, every 2 months.
right.
It's not too bad, yeah.
I'd like to second Karen's comments and just say that working with you guys is a pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
That I have on the phone and so forth. Everybody is very passionate about that recycling. We can tell from all the comments here. We have some different ideas, but I think we have the same goal.
Oh, yeah.
And that is same goal, your motto.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate your time, and if you would like to have us back anytime with follow-up questions, we're happy to attend. So
There you go.
thank you.
Take our round.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Karen, public works status.
Okay, I'm just going to hit the highlights because I think we're running out of time here. On the bridge, we get lots of questions about the status of the bridge. We're just waiting on FEMA to tell us our chances of receiving that grant. They never give us any kind of a time frame on when we could expect to get an answer. It just works its way through their process and the evaluation to go to the next step of consideration. So they've been asking questions about the application, and Civil West has been responding to those and clarifying some of the things. So we know it's working through their process. We just don't know, we're hoping that by maybe late summer, we would hear something, but we have no idea. They don't give us timeframes. So the RFPs are out again for the pump stations, which is Siusla and Midway, as well as the Midtown bathroom.
Okay.
Cross your fingers. We have a site walk today for any contractors that are bidding on the RFPs. And so we hope we get some responses. Windsor's working on the RFP for phase 1 of our water resiliency, which is the seismic valve. So that should be going out here soon. We are doing a campaign reminder. You saw it on Facebook. Please share it if you're on Facebook. We also issued some letters. We had a expensive sewer line repair on Spruce. And we found a ton of so-called flushable wipes and orange peels down our sewers.
Oh, boy.
So we sent some letters to the homeowners that are on that particular stick of pipe and asked them to please be aware of what we found in that repair. That translates to taxpayers' dollars going to repair that line. And we did a campaign, like I say, on Facebook. So it's a good time in summer. Lots of time people use those wipes to wipe their legs and stuff down after coming off the beach.
He's the one that says do not flush
Even
on the package.
flushable, they're not
Oh,
flushable.
they're not flushable. Okay.
People, no wipes in the pipes.
That's very good.
And so Tessa, great campaign. Like I say, if you're on Facebook, please share it. I noticed a couple of our council folks shared it over the last few days. And so if you're on Facebook, please share it and get the word out there. And other than that, Trevor's in Hawaii having a great time. I took his phone from him. So he has a real vacation.
That's very good. And where, what island is he on? Is it a big island or?
Maui,
Maui, very good. That's my favorite.
a well-deserved vacation. So he's gone for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Anyway, all is good in public works. We're chugging along. I'm gonna talk to you next month about our roads spreadsheet. I included in the packet, but I think it's gonna take more time than what I can give you. I have that RFP walkthrough, so I don't want to be late for that. But I'll recruit your help with that next month.
Fantastic. Anybody else has any questions for Karen?
Mm-mm.
No? Amber? Doug? No? Okay, anything for good of the order? There's a blood drive going on right now, and we need your blood. I'm not kidding. If it's afternoon, if you can talk to somebody or let people know that there is a blood drive and we do need your blood. There's appointments available, so. Anything else? No? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good. Yes.